everyone has a story, and that when we take the time to really listen, those stories can inspire us, challenge us, and maybe even spark something in us. That's why I started Passion Projects. I'm Kyle, and this show is about the people who've turned what they love into what they do, and how they've done it with heart, hustle, and intention. And today's guest, she's doing exactly that. Meet Karla Cobreiro, the founder of Cobreiro Comms, a boutique PR and communications consultancy that lives at the intersection of culture, business, and storytelling. Karla is Cuban born, Miami raised, and completely fluent in people. Karla is the kind of woman who's built buzz for luxury brands, coached top execs, and helped creatives own their worth, all with heart, humor, and a cafecito in hand. In this episode, we get into building a business with soul, leading with empathy, and turning communications into connection. So, without further ado, let's get into it. Karla, thank you so much for joining me today on Passion Projects. It's such an honor to have you on.
No, I'm so excited that we're getting to reconnect and talk about, I guess, like this new chapter that's unfolding.
Yes, exactly. I love to begin by asking all my guests in this current climate, I love to just check in and understand what is bringing you joy right now.
Yeah, I mean, we'll dive into this more, but I'm a publicist. I do PR and communications, and I'm tied to the media a lot, right? Like I
Yes.
can't wake up in the morning and like choose to disconnect or choose to like not engage or choose to not be aware of like what's going on in the world. And I think that we all know that like news and media are moving so fast these days. So it can get to be a lot. It can get to be like information overload. It can get to be like that it feels like things are in constant motion, and that can be a great thing, but sometimes that can be like exhausting, and that can be, can weigh on you and can just be a lot to deal with. So honestly, like what's bringing me joy these days are like the slow moments when I get to have like a slow morning where I'm like, I'm going to look at like texts, maybe from my family or whatever that I have to respond to, but like I'm not going to open my email. I'm not going to open the newsletters. I'm not going to like look at the news alerts, and I'm just going to like take my dog on a walk, and I'm going to maybe like have breakfast, make coffee, whatever. And then I'm going to sit down, and then I'm going to like tune in and plug in and like start getting the gear shifting and grinding. So I would say that like slow moments, maybe even on weekends where I get to just, couch rot for a little bit, catch up on some Netflix, do some like mindless streaming. But those moments are really what's bringing me joy right now.
That's the best way to go. And you need that silence in the morning just to cleanse your mind too, because I know as soon as you look at your phone, it's like the anxiety just starts, right? Like you want to really take it easy and
And you
enjoy
start
those
kind of
moments.
like redoing your to-do list. You know what I mean? Like, oh, I was going to do this, but now I got this email, or now there's this news and I need to jump on it. So it really just kind of like is a great way to start derailing your day and like, yes, giving up your peace very early. So yeah,
Yeah,
I've learned to kind of have to set some boundaries there.
right. Exactly. I totally understand what you mean. So let's begin with young Karla. What were your earliest signs of storytelling and connection? Would you say that that was the heart of your work when you first began?
I have to say that I was always a great writer when I was in like school and we were doing like learning how to write essays and things like that. And it came like relatively easy to me. And that continued throughout, high school. I went into like, an IB program in high school. So it was like STEM heavy, right? We were doing a ton of like calculus and a ton of like chemistry and physics. But writing to me was still like the easiest and the best and the most fun. But again, I come from a background of like immigrants, right? My
Yeah.
family's Cuban. I'm Cuban. We moved to the US when I was 4. And I think that in like mostly Caribbean, but overall like Hispanic cultures, there's like 2 or 3 accepted like professions, if you will, when you're going to go to like college and get a degree and whatnot. And so you can like go and be a lawyer, you can go and be like a doctor, you can go and be like an architect,
That's like
maybe
the
like
Indian culture as well.
yeah,
Same.
it's a lot of
Same.
like a minority culture, right?
Yes.
And then
You can
beyond that,
tell.
it's kind of
Yeah.
like the rest of the professions are not like really that esteemed, worthwhile, we don't invest in them. So I think I was like, and my mom was a doctor in Cuba. So I think I had this vision of like, yes, I'm one of these like high achievers, and yes, I'm going to go into one of these professions. And my mom was a doctor, and like medicine is cool, and I'm just going to go into pre-med. And I did that. I went to college. I did a pre-med track. I got a job working at the hospital in Gainesville that was like a partner to the university. I went to the University of Florida, go Gators. And I was 3 years in, and I was like, this is not it. Like, this is just not where I want to continue investing my time and continue investing, money, essentially my degree, and like basically bet my future on. So I did my summer between junior and senior year in college, where I did exploratory, and I stayed back and stayed in Gainesville instead of coming home to Miami that summer to take these classes and figure out what I was going to do. Because I was pretty much at that point, like, I'm not going to go to med school, and I'm not going to be pre-med, and I got to figure something else out. And one of the courses that I took was an intro to PR course. And so the course was talking about, what it was, and, what I guess all of the flexibility within like PR and communications, and specifically focused as like a case study on the PP oil spill. I remember that clear as day. And I was like, man, the oil spill was something that I, until that point, thought was like supernatural. Like, I didn't think that the response was put together by this team. I didn't think that the executive was going to be guided by a team on what to say and when to say it and how to say it. And so I was like, oh, wait, like these people have like people telling them what to say and what to do, and leaning into like that skill set of me being like, kind of a person that enjoyed like strategic and critical thinking, that enjoyed solving problems, but at the same time had great writing skills. I was like, this could really be something for me. And I declared the major by the end of the summer and graduated by the end of the next year. And here we are today.
I love that 3 years in, that's when you realize too, like you didn't wait as long as other people do to really understand, this is not for me, but I'm on a trajectory to something else that I love, and taking these courses that made you want to do it.
And I have to say, when I called home and I said, listen, I'm going to be shifting from pre-med, I'm not going to go to med school, I'm going to do this thing called PR. You have to think about a few things. My family comes from a country where like free press and media and things like that don't necessarily exist, where journalists are potentially prosecuted for not telling the stories that they're supposed to tell and are not really allowed to like tell the truth. And so I think that they at the time were like, well, this is kind of like journalism, and like this is a terrible idea. Number one, you're like not going to do well financially. Number two, like it's just not a career that you want to, kind of go into. Again, it wasn't one of the categories that I think like are the accepted professions. And so there was some pushback, and thankfully, I say thankfully because like at the time, again, immigrant family, we didn't have like college funds, we didn't have college money. So it was like I was working full time, and I was paying for my rent, and I was paying for my books, and I was paying, I had some scholarships that I got. So I was able to make that decision and go with my gut, even though everyone told me otherwise. And I'm so glad that I did, because I think that if the circumstances had been different, I would have maybe not listened to what I at that point was realizing were my strengths and what I would have been good at, what I would have really enjoyed. And I would have maybe have gone with like what people expected of me, right?
Exactly.
So it was like a little bit of an act of rebellion, but I'm so glad that I stuck with it, and I listened to whatever that was inside of me that said, this is probably the way for you. Because it could have ended up that I, would have stuck through so much more of that pre-med without getting kind of to an end where I was happy.
Oh, 100%. I remember in high school when I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew I loved sports, right? So going into college, it was like, okay, if I'm not going to play the game, let me do something pertaining to the game. And that was journalism. That was, trying to be on camera or learning the behind the scenes of it too. And of course, to your point, it was hard to get a job within that field as well. And I remember there were times when my parents were just like, what is she doing? Like, I have my brother who's doing so well, accounting, doing all like following all the trajectory to what he wants to do. But that was not for me. That was not what I wanted, right? But the progression of it, sticking with it, being passionate about it, I think is huge too. It will get you places as well. And that belief, that one person that says, you know what, you have something in you, you can do it, right? And I think that also helps to really help you find your path.
Yeah.
So you've worked in industries across media, travel, hospitality. Was there a moment when you realized I can do this on my own terms?
Yeah. So first things first, I have an identical twin sister, right? And she is an attorney, and she went off on her own 3 years ago. This summer it'll be. And so she has her own firm. She runs a law firm. It's incredibly successful. She does really well. And she's obviously been somebody that I look up to, in that regard and others, but I'm like, wow, she's like really like running this whole business and this whole firm, and she has all these employees and these happy clients, and like that's been an incredible, I guess, like thing to look to, right?
Mhm.
And again, someone who's like my age, who has my same life experiences, who has my same upbringing, who is very much in many ways my equal, right? So that's been super motivating and super helpful. And so she went off on her own. I started getting her some PR hits, right? She works in family law, she works in real estate. I started helping her get on stages. I started helping her get interviews, started helping her win some awards. And so I had always done PR, obviously, for like my clients, and I've always worked in house. So like I've been at NBC Universal doing work for just the executives there. I've been at the airport, and I was a spokeswoman at the airport. So I was announcing like new airlines and different things. So I've always done like the work that I was supposed to do, you know what I mean, by like my employer. But I had never been like, oh, there's this thing, like, let me see what I can get out of it, right? Or what I can PR out of it. So she was, I guess, my first test dummy, if you will, in like just trying to see where I could do different PR that didn't have to necessarily do with like my job and the work that I was doing, right? So anyway, that happened, and then it's combined with the fact that like I've always been, again, this kind of like person with like high expectations, whether it's been
Mhm.
that I have set those on myself, or my upbringing and my background have kind of imposed some of that on me. But the bottom line is that I've always sought like growth on my own terms, at my own speed. It's why I've been in like so many different like roles, right? And I've had so many like different facets within PR and communications. I've done agencies, I've done financial sectors, I've done real estate, I've done restaurants, I've done hotels, I've done executives, I've done nonprofits. And so I think all of those things combined, realizing that I was only going to have to continue on this path of like finding the next adventure, the next promotion, the next challenge, the next thing. And one way to kind of like sort of eliminate that and just go at my own speed and make my own rules and find my own growth, in the way that I could develop it, was to just go on my own and start my own thing. And so that's when it
Yeah.
really, like, all of those things combined, seeing her do that, kind of having some success with doing her PR, and then being like, wait, I could like kind of replicate this, and I could take everything that I know and everything that I've done, and realizing kind of like the value of what I had learned or have learned
Mhm.
over a 10 plus year career in all these different, industries, and doing all these different types of work within PR and communication, that I was like, maybe I should like really be trying to do this by myself or for myself, you know?
You know what? It's a line that I have with a player who's in the NBA right now, plays for the Houston Rockets, once the Toronto Raptor, Fred VanVleet. His motto is bet on yourself. And
Yep.
that's what you did. And I love that. And that is what has made you to land you where you are right now in this particular moment in time. I love it.
And I think I was always like betting on myself too, and like
Yes. Sure.
going into this new challenge, this new job, this new industry, this new kind of PR. Every time that I, changed jobs or whatever the case was, or said yes to the next promotion, the next challenge, the next thing, like I think I was betting on myself, right? It was a way of betting on myself all those other times, and I think that gave me a lot of solace too, where it's like I tried so many different things so many different times, that like this is just another facet of that, right? This is just another time that I'm trying something different, and another time that I'm betting on myself. Granted, in a very big way, but it's still kind of more of the same. Yeah.
Yeah. No, most definitely. Most definitely. I mean, so as we begin to talk more about, your business too, you've helped shape brands and movements. What have you learned about how people actually connect with stories today?
Listen, I think that the biggest thing is that people want to connect with what's real, right? People want to connect not necessarily with something that's overly polished, with something that's overly produced. I mean, we see this a lot even on social media, right? Reels and videos and posts don't necessarily look like they used to back in the day. And so they don't necessarily want to know just like what you do, but they want to know like who you are and why you do it and how you do it and like why all of that matters, right?
Yeah.
And it goes back to what? The storytelling, right? To like being able to take whatever somebody's doing, whether that's in law or in a nonprofit or in a bank or in a restaurant or in a hotel, and turning it into something that like really sparks something in people, right? So if you can tap into that what it is and that connection and that who you are and like how it is that you're going to land with other people and say that with like clarity and conviction, then you're not just sharing a story and you're starting a relationship. And I think like that's where the magic happens.
And like, how is it that you coach your clients to be that way or to define their success or tell their story? Is it difficult? Or are some people difficult than other people?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it runs the gamut. I was actually telling somebody about this just yesterday because they were calling me for some advice on, another solopreneur, if you will, entrepreneur. And she was like calling me for some advice on a new project she was going to take on. I said, listen, I have clients where I can give them a media opportunity to, I don't know, do a broadcast segment. And I just have to give them the rundown and like talk to them once and they show up and they do great and they kill it because they either have the experience, the personality, the existing training, whatever the case is. But then I have other people who, I sit down with and I say, these are the potential questions or these are the things that they're going to talk about. And like, let's pretend that I'm the journalist or the reporter. And I'm just going to run through a whole interview with you so you can practice like answering this and telling your story and doing the segment on the fly, right? And we do that maybe twice, 3 times before we actually go to the day of and do the segment and film it so that they feel comfortable and they don't like freeze up in front of the cameras and all of that. So it really varies. But I think at the end of the day, again, what I remind people is like their lived experiences matter. Their story, their individual path, their individual why matters. And I think like sometimes we're like quick to downplay what comes naturally to us. And maybe we assume like, oh, if it wasn't so hard, or if it's like not hard for me to like tell it, or if I don't sound like super intelligent, then maybe it's not as valuable. And I think like that's where we miss some really incredible opportunities. So just helping them unpack their story, figure out what their point of view is, and shape that into something that feels personal. And it isn't about being loud. It's about being like clear and being consistent and telling their truth. Because again, that's how it goes beyond the story into like a connection and a relationship.
Exactly. Which leads me to what makes a good story actually newsworthy in this world, of course, full of so much noise.
I mean, listen, I have to admit it's getting harder and harder each day to be a story, right? And to be newsworthy. But again, that's why I think my job is so interesting and like it's ever evolving and I'm a lifelong learner. But like newsworthiness is a lot about like alignment, right? It has to be like the right time, it has to be relevant, it has to have impact. So like why now? Why this? And like why should people care? And I think it goes back to telling stories and to the humans and to the problems that you solve and your mission or like the work that it is that you're doing, or who you're doing it for, right? And like why. And so it's not just enough to have like a new product or like a new initiative, but like where is it that you're like challenging a norm? Where is it that you're maybe offering a different lens on something that we thought had been done and had been understood? Where are you tapping into like a specific audience that isn't being serviced by maybe your competitors or by other brands? That's, I think, what's cutting through these days.
Yes, no, definitely. Oh, and like that niche, right? That they have as well. Like what makes you different from the rest as well. I
Yep.
personally find too. I mean, let's leap into your company and talk a little bit about that. You were doing so well. I love the work that I'm seeing across my social platforms um, from your company, and I just want to know more about what made now the right time for you to own your own business.
I mean, listen, if I sit down and think about it, it's been a little bit of a roller coaster of a year. I launched in January of this year. And so it's been a little bit of a roller coaster. And I think that if I had thought it through a little bit more and was like, oh, like a new administration is coming in and like the economy is going to do all
Yeah.
these fluctuations and things like that, I have to say, maybe now wasn't the best time to start the business, and maybe now wasn't the time to do the leap. But I think that my maybe like lack of understanding or lack of thinking or lack of like foresight in that sense was part of what pushed me. Because I think if I would have considered that, then maybe I would have like pumped the brakes or I would have maybe waited longer. So I also think like things happen when they're meant to happen. But again, I do think that I was at a moment in my career where I was like, well, what's next for me, right? And again, if I'm asking like what's next, then does that mean, I'm gonna go find another role? Am I gonna, is it time for me to get promoted and take on more at my current role? So I was really on one of those crossroads. And I think that that's how I landed on the answer of like, you know what, I think now is the time for me to try this. And I always say, if for whatever reason I decide that a consultancy, that this work is not for me or isn't what I want, the door is always open in, corporate America, if you will, for me to go back and find a job in-house, with a brand or at an agency or whatever. I'm a single woman. I'm in my 30s. I, own a condo and I have a dog. I don't have a family. So I also think it's like a time in my life where I am able to take more risks and I am able to do things more just like for me and because it's what I want without maybe having the weight of like others' needs or others' expectations or others or like, I have a responsibility financially to like, I don't know, my children, a husband, a partner, whatever the case is. So I also think that now is as good a time as ever. And everyone that I spoke to about this, when I was wondering whether I was going to do it and whether, this was the next leap for me, told me that I would only regret not having done it sooner.
Yeah.
And I thought that was some really interesting and some really cool perspective and advice. And I was like, yeah, you know what? I don't want to be, I don't know, 50, 60 thinking what if I had, or what if I had, hadn't. So we're trying it and we're doing it. And I'm excited that you see the momentum. I'm excited by the momentum. And I think that, things are lining up the way that they should have.
And you know what? You can never dictate what the landscape looks like. You just got to kind of go out there and do it. From everything I've learned from the guests that I've had on, it's just like if you have an idea, like just go for it. Just do it. And I'm like a big Meghan Markle fan. I listen to her podcast, everything like that. And like I know that she's working on her whole entrepreneur venture as well as ever. And she's like, what I'm doing is I'm building the plane as I'm going as well. There's going to be challenges along the way, but you just kind of got to go out there and do it. And you're presenting yourself in a way that people are understanding. People are coming to you. You're as much as we're learning, they're learning as well. And so I think that is also key for sure.
I have to give kudos to whoever's doing her PR because I mean they've been doing a great job.
I know, right?
She's all over the place and like good for her, that she's doing that right. But I also think like that's an important part, and it goes back to like telling your personal story and to like being vulnerable and understanding what makes you different. I am winging this. I am winging starting my own business. I am winging how I'm going to work with my clients. I'm winging a lot of things, but I'm not winging my experience in PR,
Exactly.
And so I think that is an important thing that I had to come to terms with, where like, yes, I'm going to be winging a lot of parts of this about how I want it to run and how I want it to look and how I want it to sound and how I want it to feel and who I want to work with or why I'm building it. That I can figure out as I'm going, right? And I can figure out what felt good and what didn't feel good, as I'm doing it, and say, well, moving forward, now I know I don't want this, or moving forward, now I know that I do want more of this. But I'm not winging the work. I'm not winging the results, and I'm not winging the outcomes that I'm giving to clients or the expertise that I bring to the table. And I think that was a really important distinction.
100%. I completely agree with you. And what does scaling with intention mean to you? Like look like in your day-to-day right now?
Yeah, listen, I think, again, it's a perfect segue that you mentioned Meghan Markle and all of that, because it does look like, figuring out who the right clients are for me, right? And what's the right client for me right now in my first year of business may or may not look like what my right client is in my second, third, or 10th year of business, right? But like, what clients am I looking to work with? What brands do I believe in? Whose work, whose mission, whose story, right? Do I really believe in, and do I really think that needs to be told? What is it that I think like sometimes one thing that PR specifically struggles with is that you get hired in as like a consultant, as an agency, as a partner, depending on what your specific role is for a client, a company, a brand, an organization. And you've got different people on the other side. And sometimes the people on the other side know nothing about PR and have to lean on you entirely and have to take your word for whatever it is that you're saying. And sometimes there is like maybe a PR lead on the other side who has equal or as much or somewhat of an experience that you do, and then they have their own opinion, right, as to how things should be done. And so I think I've also learned that I want to work with clients who get it, like clients who understand, clients who come to us because they trust that we have counsel that they don't, because we have a perspective that they don't, and they want to like respect it, right? They don't want to just say, well, that's great, but like we want it done this way, and we just want you to execute it the way that we say that we want it done, or whatever the case is, right? So like scaling with intention means like not saying yes to every project that comes across my desk, not responding to every RFP, which is a request for proposal that comes across my way, not trying to like take on work out of like a place of like fear because I feel like maybe I don't have enough work, or desperation because I feel like I should be growing faster. Like really scaling with a team like of workers and employees and publicists and things like that, graphic designers, event people that are good people that I like working with, that we share values, mission, things like that. And then on the other side, the clients and the brands that we are winning for and winning alongside, kind of match that and fit, that ethos, if you will, and that vision that we have.
And I know how much you value your graphic designers from your stories that you posted too. Listen, they are very vital. I mean, Canva is a difficult thing to crack sometimes when you're trying to get certain things a way that you want them to be, right?
Yeah, and listen, you're saying that because I had a team that was just running all of the socials for the company that I brought on early on, and eventually we decided that we were gonna part ways. But I started doing my own designs on Canva for my own Instagram, and like I'm talking like one picture for the feed, and I found that was taking me like 2 hours, and
Yeah.
I that's one of the things of like being a business owner that I think you have to like wing and learn and like build the plane while you're flying it. It's like you can't do it all. And even though I can do a design on Canva and I can, get a post up and whatever, you can't do all the work. There's so many things that go on behind the scenes. Somebody else wrote me yesterday at, I think it was like 6 o'clock, and they're like, "Hey, how are you? What's up?" And I was like, "I'm wrapping up my official work day and I'm shifting into like the work day of everything that happens behind the scenes that nobody really thinks about." And that is like social media, that is like contracts, that is like, everything else that happens that nobody really sees. And so I think that having to learn to delegate and having to learn to be like, somebody else can do this better and faster and quicker than I can, and I can't just hoard all the work, is another really important lesson along the way.
And another thing is, I'm curious to know like how you differentiate your work-life balance too, because you own your own business. Do you feel as though you have to continue to go, 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 or do you take that time for yourself to be like, okay, I need a breather. I need to like reconnect with myself. There are so many stresses, and so much anxiety too that can build up as well.
Yeah, listen, it goes both ways.
Yeah.
I am the type of person that wants everything done now, and like if I have an idea, I really want to just like get it on paper and get it in motion and get it going. But the to-do list is very long, right?
Mhm.
So you can't tackle everything at once. And at the same time, sometimes I find that I'm like out enjoying myself, but actually worrying about the things that I'm not doing because I like made this decision to like do X instead of like staying home and like working on Y. So
Yeah.
it's actually something I think is never going to go away. And I've come to peace with that. But I do think that like finding those moments, and it's kind of where we open the conversation, right? Finding those moments of like, no, I'm going to build and rest. And I know that I could be using this hour, 2 hours, or 3 hours to work on the company, but I have given so much to the company this week, and I have given so much to like what I'm building. At some point, some of it is like my time, right? And my time of like I said, watching Netflix on the couch without feeling guilty,
Mhm.
without trying to strategize of like, okay, well then I'm gonna do this and then I'm gonna do that other thing, like really disconnect. I have to say I wasn't great with the self-care the first few months of like this business,
Oh, for
but I
sure.
started going back to Orange Theory, 5 days a week, and really saying like, okay, I'm scheduled for that 7:15 p.m. class.
Mhm.
So like I have a stopping point, right? I can't work until like 11 because I have to get up and go. They charge you a late fee if you don't show up, which I love. So then it's like or a no-show fee, not a late fee. But anyway, I love that because it forces me to be like, no, okay, I'm gonna go put on my workout clothes. I'm gonna go work
Yeah.
out. And for that 1 hour, for example, I'm so focused on like not dying in my workout because I am struggling that I can't think about the business. And for me, that's also great, right? That's also
Mhm.
a great kind of like break and a great way to step away. You have endorphins, obviously feel good about like getting stronger and all of that. So I build in a lot of that, especially on weekends. There's some weekends that I do work. There's some weekends that I, just end up sitting at the desk and kind of getting things done that I can't get done when I have meetings and other commitments, events, launches. But yeah, it's a catch-22. It depends on the week, but I do try to be intentional about that, because I do think like burnout is real. And I do think like, again, the list is never ending. You can
No, yes.
always add more stuff that you need to do to the list.
It's so true. And you're right. Burnout is a thing. And I've been impacted by it too. And it can affect your health so much. So then you need to take that step back. You need to really align with yourself too, for sure. I totally get that.
And
I
I
mean,
also think like if you get to a point where you're burnt out and you want to step away, and again you're the business owner, you don't
yeah,
always have like what happens then, right? Like the work needs to
yeah.
keep moving, the team still has questions, the client still is owed deliverables or has a launch or has a deadline. So I think like I also try to be super mindful of that. Like the
Mhm.
business needs to run, but the business also can't run without me. And I want to grow the business, but like I don't want to put myself in a situation where then I have to take a step back. And what does that mean? It's actually going to do the opposite of growing the business. So
Yeah.
so I try to be super mindful about that.
Which brings me to my next question. Like, how would you define success now being solo? Is it different from what it used to be?
Absolutely. I have to be honest with you. Throughout my career, titles were a big way that I defined my success. A paycheck was a really big way that I defined my success.
Yeah.
I think that the size of the team, right? I had a whole team that I was leading at the agency that I left, and I was leading a whole office. And so that is no longer really like a measure of success. Big names, super big brands. I'm working with incredible names and incredible brands now, but I did walk away from a client roster that anyone would have dreamed to work for and work on and work with. And so I think you do have to like reimagine what all of that looks like, right? Reshift how big your team has to be in order for you to be successful. I think, even in the first year of business, the fact that I'm like paying myself a salary and in the green when it comes to like, finances and things like that for me is a win.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's definitely a little bit comical because it goes against everything that I believed coming up until this point, everything that I chased, right? And all of that growth that I was looking for before. It just looks different. It doesn't mean that it isn't there. It's just a very different landscape than what I was playing in before.
Oh my gosh, I completely get it. Yeah. And then it's great. It's great, right? Like you're at a place where you're happier now doing what you're doing. Would you
One, I
say?
think I think I'm in a position where I very much feel empowered and in charge
Mm.
of my future, right? Where I feel like the possibilities are limitless. And like, I mean, if this is what I've achieved in we're in June of 6 months of running a business and being solo and having this brand, I can't imagine what this brand is going to look like in 5 years. And like, that's really exciting too, because I think the sky is going to be the limit at that point. So I think that there's a lot of that like desire to keep working and to not stop and to sprint and to grow is also coming from like, well, how great can I make it? Like, how big can this leap and can this like opportunity become down the line, not just for me, but for any brands that I work with or for anybody who comes on the team with me.
And it's great to have that long-term big vision as well. As much as you're in the present, you want to, of course, you can't help but think about what the future may hold.
Yeah, and again, putting the things in place now so that I can build that future, right? And again, building intentionally, making the right decisions, bringing on the right people, putting the right processes in place, saying yes to the right opportunities and walking away from the ones that don't feel like a great fit. Like, all of those things are really decisions that I'm making and shaping what this is going to be.
Which is huge. I love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Which brings me to understanding the biggest myth about PR that you wish people knew more of.
I think a lot of people think of PR when they think of like a Devil Wears Prada type of thing, where like there's all these like I mean, Anne Hathaway's character went through a lot. Like, don't get me wrong, but I think it seems sometimes I think easier than it is, right? For example, somebody once in my career told me like, well, how hard can it be? You just have to like send a media alert, like that'll take 15 minutes, and I was like, well, actually, no. I have to understand what I'm drafting the media alert for, right? Like, who I'm trying to get to this event, to this thing. I have
Mhm.
to research that, understand it, put it together in a way that it's going to speak to media, so that when the alert lands on their desk, they actually like care about it, as opposed to the other 10 that are coming in the same hour, right? And then I have to start making phone calls, and then I start having to say, hey, making sure that you got this media alert, making sure that you can make it, making sure that you can come. And then, there's a lot of prep that goes on behind the scenes when you're going to have any kind of media, event, any launch, any press conference, anything like that. And then the day off, there's also a ton of work. I'm still calling people. I'm still on the phone. And I remember one time I had a very senior person have to step in to a project because I just couldn't be in two places at once. And I was at an agency, and she was helping us secure interviews for an executive. And she said something along the same line. She said like, oh, wow, but like landing the interview is only half the work. And I said, yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of like, things behind, like people just see the interview, right? Like that goes on TV, or people just see like somebody winning an award, or see somebody like on a podcast, or somebody on a stage, but so much more goes on behind the scenes to get to that final point.
It's true. There's so much people don't know. So I'm happy that you're helping us better understand it too.
Yeah.
But I want to know, from this now AI space, how is that affecting the PR space?
Listen, I think it's affecting it incredibly, as it is affecting everything, right? And I have to say, I'm not the type of person that is against growth, that is against developments, that is against change, because I think that if we turn our backs away from that, as I'll be vulnerable. When TikTok came out, I was like, I'm not gonna like join another social media platform. Like I can, I don't have the bandwidth. And TikTok took like basically the world over by storm, right? And I think, so eventually I had to get on the bandwagon, and I had to like learn, and I had to understand, right? And so I think that like AI is like another example of that, right? It's taking the industry by storm. It's taking the world by storm. It's even changing like SEO, right? It's even changing how you show up. As a matter of fact, now people are searching sometimes on AI, and in ChatGPT and things like that, the way that they used to search on Google, right? So now it's like, now you just don't have to worry about how you show up on Google. Now you also have to worry about how you show up on ChatGPT, for example. And a lot of times what it does is it picks up from like those sources that are the articles, and that are the interviews, and are the news, and the message, and the things that are out there about you and your brand. I use AI as my intern. I don't use it to like write copy and things like that. At the end of the day, I still think that there's like a human element and human touch, and that's very much needed. But if I need like ideas, brainstorms, like anything that's creative, anything that's like, hey, I'm trying to like put this post up on social media, like what could like an image that accompanies this look like, or what kind of elements, or like what's the best way to illustrate, or like, hey, I want to say this with alliteration, what could this look like? So I use it for a lot of like that creative imagining. So again, when you're a small startup, and you're kind of like running on a very slim team, I'm like, it's another team member. Like AI is put me through a lot of help. Like it's just helped me in a lot of ways.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think it's a great assistant for sure.
I also have been looking into like a bunch of tools too for like project management that incorporate AI, that remind you to follow up on certain things. So again, I'm just trying to learn as much as I can. I don't think that it's ever going to replace the work of a publicist. I don't think it's ever going to, do away with our industry, our career. I'll give you an example. I asked it to put together a media list for me, and it didn't do a great job, right? So like, again, I still need to know what I know, and I still need to know who I know. But I do like to understand what it can do better, what it can help us do faster, what it can, give us good ideas with, and like where it is that it still has those gaps, and where it is that our work is so crucial.
Oh my gosh, I completely agree. And I'd love to like go beyond that too, and ask you about, so you're fluent in 2 languages and fluent in people. How has that emotional fluency shaped your leadership and style?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think somebody told me early on in my career that they felt like vulnerability was a superpower, and I thought that was so interesting, because I thought, and I was working in a very corporate setting at the time, and there's a certain, I think, expectation that I had, and that maybe a lot of people have, about like what corporate America looks like, and what your job is, and what you're expected to do, and how you're expected to act, right? There seems to be, or I thought that there seemed to be like this expectation of like a filter and all of that. But I think that being vulnerable is super important, right? Again, about the things that I know, about the things that I don't know, about what I've done, about what I haven't done, about how would I attack a certain, problem that a client is having, or a challenge, or a goal, or an opportunity. And I think that has to do a lot with like emotional intelligence and having emotional
Yes.
fluency, right? So like I don't
Yes.
just listen to like what people are saying, but I listen for what they mean. So if a client is telling me that they're worried about a certain, interview, or a certain conversation, or a certain thing, like where's that coming from, right? Is it because they're worried about certain questions coming up that they're not ready to deal with, or is like the pressure that a client is potentially putting on me, my agency, my team to drive results? What is that driven by? Like who is putting pressure or expectations on them to deliver on a certain outcome? So whether it's that I'm leading a team, whether it's that I'm guiding a client or mentoring someone, because I love mentoring, uh, um, usually the younger generation, but I feel like at this point I mentor people of all kinds of like walks of life and at all stages in their career. I lead with empathy, I lead with clarity, I lead with like my presence of like I'm just like being me, and I'm giving you the real on what I know
Mhm.
and what I think about the situation. And so I feel like that has made me a better strategist, a better partner, a better leader, and given me kind of the results that I've gotten to today.
Love that. I love that. I mean, what kind of legacy are you hoping to build based on what you've mentioned as well? Not just through your work, but in how you show up for others as well.
I mean, listen, I think like the words that come to mind are probably like courage, right? Are probably like clarity, are probably people feeling seen, people feeling heard. I want people to feel like when I'm in the room, like we can have like a real conversation, whether it's about your goals, whether it's about your challenges, whether it's about like the things that you're worried about and what you're concerned about. But I try to show up and be like present and be generous and be real, and I think like that sets an example for other people, or it creates the opportunity for other people to do the same and to feel the same and to conduct themselves in the same way. And listen, at the end of the day, I think I'm like still relatively young. I am an immigrant. There's a lot of things that I don't know. This is a really big leap of faith as far as like creating my own, company and going for it. And so I want that to be part of the legacy too of,
Yeah.
like, yes, nobody really fully has all the answers, and nobody is 100% sure that now is the right time or the best time. But like you kind of like jump into what it is that you feel is your calling, or you feel is that next opportunity or that next chapter, and you kind of give it your all. So I want to be an example of that for anyone else who's like kind of unsure and who's kind of like not, maybe like not super happy with where they're at and not really sure what's next, or not really sure if they're ready. Like that's part of the legacy too.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and then that goes on to, if your journey had a tagline, what would it be?
So I joke around a lot that I'm fueled by coffee these days, and like really it's just like coffee and anxiety. So probably like something like fueled by coffee, or fueled by cafecito, curiosity and maybe like conviction, because really like that's what we're doing here. That's really what we're doing here. Having the conviction that we can do what it is that we're setting out to do, that we can overcome, whatever challenges and figure out. And again, part of that is being curious, and part of that is figuring out what you don't know and figuring out how you learn what you don't know.
Which brings me to my next exciting little particular moment that we have in this podcast about curiosity. I love to do a little rapid fire with my guests, and I would love to do a little rapid fire with you.
Yep.
Let's have a little
Let's go.
fun. Okay, ready? First question: cafecito or matcha latte? Of course, I do. I'm
Cafecito.
not
Can
gonna
you
pick.
believe I've never tried matcha?
No. Oh my gosh, you
I
must.
have homework. I have
So
homework.
good. It's so good. Uh, press event or power brunch?
I think a press event, because for me it's kind of the same thing. Like the room is flowing. I'm networking. Like I love a press event.
Least favorite PR buzzword?
Probably authenticity, because I feel like they use it and they think that they're being authentic just because they say they are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dream client, dead or alive?
Celia Cruz was a legend, as a brand, as a movement, as a woman. So I think like if that would ever line up, I how do you beat that?
Right? Okay. If your life had a soundtrack, who's the artist behind it?
My life probably has a soundtrack and it's Bad Bunny. That's the
Love it.
playlist.
First word that comes to mind when you hear legacy.
Having intention.
Nice. Most used emoji in your DMs.
The laughing emoji. We just laugh through everything around here.
Miami in 3 words.
Vibrant, opportunity, and probably home.
And last thing that made you say, that's a story.
There's a brand that I work with that got a really incredible investment from a Latin Grammy winning artist, and we can't talk about it. But I was like, can we run with this? Like, if we start telling, and they were like, no, we can't talk about it. And I was like, man, that would have been such a story.
So good.
Yeah.
And one piece of advice that you'd like to give to those who are in the startup space or want to become entrepreneurs, have this brilliant idea, and just want to go ahead and do it.
I mean, again, goes back to what you said about Megan and what we talked about. Don't wait until you feel like you're ready. Don't wait until you feel like all the conditions are right. You get ready by doing. You figure things out by doing them. And again, figuring out what feels good, what feels right, what worked well, what didn't. So build whatever feels aligned with you, set out to build that. Not whatever looks good on paper or sounds good. And I think if you anchor yourself to that, then you'll be able to figure it out.
Where can people reach you, follow you, plug your contact?
Yeah, I mean, LinkedIn is the best form to get in touch if you guys wanna shoot me a message, get a chat on the calendar. Otherwise, CobreiroComms.com. Go check out the website. We worked really hard on it, making sure it looked really good with the graphic design team and the website team. And if not, Instagram and LinkedIn, we have profiles there as well, Cobreiro Comms, and you can see some of the work, some of the interviews, and maybe this featured on the feed at some point.
Yay! Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Karla. It's been such a pleasure talking with you.
I'm so glad that we got to catch up, and I'm so glad that we got to chat about all of this stuff this morning.
Same. Thank you. Thanks so much for tuning in to this week's episode of Passion Projects. I hope Karla's journey inspired you to own your story and lead with purpose, just like she does. If you enjoyed this conversation, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who could use a little inspiration as well. You can follow along on social as well. And until next time, keep chasing what lights you up. And I'll see you again. Take care.